Welcome to this event from the Health Innovation Hub. We would like to start today the Library Resources and Research for Entrepreneurs. This is a collaborative event with the Edmonton Public Library, the University of Alberta Libraries, and the University of Alberta Health Innovation Hub. So we have three amazing speakers to present today: Holly Arneson, Celine Garreau-Brennan, and Colleen Andreatz. Before we begin, we're going to start with the Territorial Acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the University of Alberta, its buildings, labs, and research stations are primarily located on the traditional territory of Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, and Ojibwa, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe nations, lands that are now known as part of Treaties 6, 7, and 8, and homeland of the Métis. The University of Alberta respects the sovereignty, lands, histories, languages, knowledge systems, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations. So to give a very brief background about what the Health Innovation Hub is and what we do, the Health Innovation Hub is a community incubator for innovators and entrepreneurs who are working towards better human health outcomes. And we help health entrepreneurs to achieve commercialization success for their health and life sciences technologies by providing programming support, access to space and training resources, coaching and consulting support, and connections to peers and advisors. This slide talks about some of our services, including space and equipment. We are going to have an advisory council coming up very soon. We do project-based consulting. There's a community that we are always a big focus of the Health Innovation Hub, and coaching, as well as access to talent and a job board. We have an incubation space, which is lovely, located just off Jasper Avenue. And this is a view of Jasper Avenue, right where we are located at this moment in Enterprise Square, very close to Edmonton Public Library as well. Our business model is where companies apply. We analyze that application. We identify what are the areas of support that we provide. And then through a hands-on model, which also tracks the progress of the company, we provide the support that the companies need. So it's very personalized for companies. So if you have got any questions, we could be reached either by phone, through email at healthhub@ualberta.ca. Our website is here, and my colleague Marina is also going to be posting it throughout in this chat. It is uab.ca/hhub. And we have got our dedicated LinkedIn, and other social media will be coming shortly. So with that, we are coming to our most important event for today, which is Library Resources and Research for Entrepreneurs. I'm going to stop the share here because it will be taken over by my colleagues, Holly, Colleen, and sorry, I have lost my slides. Okay.
Sorry about that, Paramita. I just saw you stop sharing, so I shared mine. Would you like me to stop sharing right now? So you
yes, please, because I cannot find my slides. Thank you so much.
No problem. I got too excited. I wanted to share right away.
That's all good. Perfect. Sorry about that. So I am going to hand it over soon to Celine, Holly, and Colleen. So very short bios about Celine, Holly, and Colleen. Celine is a business librarian at the University of Alberta Library, and she's also the co-lead of the library's new entrepreneurship and innovation team, roles in which she supports and works with the Alberta School of Business to elevate their learning, teaching, and research. Through her work in both academia and public libraries, as well as her graduate studies, she developed an awareness and passion for business research and information literacy. Prior to working in libraries, Celine had a varied career in theater and sustainable retail management, in which she honed her skills as a leader and creative problem solver. Holly is the Associate Manager Makerspace with Edmonton Public Library. She coordinates the development and operations of the Stanley Milner Makerspace, as well as guiding development of making and creating services at EPL branches. And Colleen is a community librarian at Stanley Milner. In addition to working with individual customers, she connects community organizations to the resources of EPL, promoting lifelong learning through information and entertainment. Thank you for joining us today, and we're very excited to hear from you. Over to you, Celine, Colleen, and Holly.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paramita, and we're really happy to be here. Just a little heads up that we've got a PowerPoint presentation for you, and we have also made sure that these slides should be shareable for everyone with the link. So I'm just popping the link in here because I do want to invite you through all of this to follow along with us. There might be hyperlinks on there that you want to try out while we're talking. And so go ahead, go for that. So thanks for that lovely introduction, Paramita. My name is Celine Garreau-Brennan. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm joined by... Oh, Colleen, you're muted. Sorry.
Okay, unmuted. Colleen Andreas, I'm a community librarian at the Milner Library downtown, and I also use the pronouns she and her.
And I'm Holly Arneson, Associate Manager Makerspace, that's situated also out of the downtown branch location for Edmonton Public Library, and I have the pronouns she, her.
Excellent. So I'm really happy to be presenting with these brilliant EPL colleagues of mine. And today what we've got is just a short outline. I'll be going through some tips and tricks for business research. Then Colleen's going to be talking about Edmonton Public Library's web resources. Holly's then going to talk us through the EPL Makerspace, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. I'm also monitoring the chat, and I know we're all monitoring the chat too. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in there. If we think it's something that's best suited to the end, we might wait until then, but we might also talk about it if it is something that we think would be relevant for what we're talking about in the moment. So let's get started with some tips and tricks when it comes to business research. So I help a lot of students and faculty when it comes to that. And one thing we see a lot about business research is some of those big challenges that come up. And these are some of the challenges I see people coming up with the most during business research. One is you might not be able to access information without paying for it. Two, even if you're willing to pay for information, even if you have a budget for information, the information might not be publicly available, or the specific information or data point you seek might not exist. And it breaks my heart sometimes when I have to break that to a student, but it happens so often where the information specifically doesn't exist that they want that would answer that question magically. The other thing is that the information might not be verifiable or accurate, and the amount of information can be overwhelming. Now, there's ways to counteract all of that. In terms of even if you're willing to pay for information, the information might not be publicly available. That information might be proprietary, might be company secrets, but someone else might have information that answers your research question too. The thing is that also, if what you are looking for doesn't exist, it is sometimes a really good sign that you're on the right track and that what you're doing is really innovative and niche. And there's a market for that because there hasn't been one in the past. So don't lose hope if that is your case. I do want to promote that. And the idea that information might not be verifiable, there's ways to critically evaluate your information sources. Now, the amount of information can be overwhelming, but hopefully through this presentation, we'll give you ways to break down the information you need into categories and also give you an idea of ways forward to kind of look at that. So Going from there, if you can't find information that's publicly available easily, I'll be showing you some spots you can specifically look at later in this presentation, but every case is really specific and different. So it helps to think, who cares enough about your industry to produce or publish information about it? So a few places to look would be government, trade or professional association, news, research institutes, commercial firms. So this might be consulting firms, for example, academics and organizations themselves. So thinking in that way of breaking down information by who cares about your industry enough to publish in it is a really central framework to bring forward for that. Now, as mentioned, often information exists, but you can't get your hands on it because it's proprietary or company secrets. In this case, you might need to do your own primary research. So in business, we often talk about primary and secondary research. Primary research is the stuff you gather yourself. And then information from the library is secondary research. The secondary research can make any argument you have to make more robust. It could complement any strategic decision you're making, but it's important to remember that not all the information, not all the research is going to be secondary, and not to get overwhelmed by that. Always go back to that primary research as well. Now, primary research can have that downside of being a lot of work. But secondary research can also have the downside of not always being exactly relevant to your work or accurate. So there's many ways to evaluate whether information is true or relevant to you, but my favorite format is these 4 questions. So 1, who provides the information? Is the information reviewed? Is there an editorial board if this is something that is published, even online? Now, 2, what kind of authority do those who provide the information have? What are their credentials? And also, are they experts? But not just are they experts in the specific field that they're talking about, right? And then 3rd, what is the goal of the author or the provider? Are they selling anything? Is there a lot of ads? What's the end goal? And then 4, what is the reliability of the information? Are the sources cited? Is there objectivity? And are the facts verifiable elsewhere? So those are kind of my 4 questions that I go to when I'm trying to evaluate information. And there's some people who might say there's a right and wrong answer to this, but it's all really contextual and something to keep in mind in terms of that. Now, another big challenge in business research is not getting overwhelmed by the amount of information. Just hands raised, who's gotten overwhelmed with business research before? I know I have, like I definitely have. I did yesterday for a research question I was looking at for a student. But there are ways to kind of divide the type of research you need into different parts. And there's all these different ways of doing this. There's no right way, but here are a few key research components that entrepreneurs often need to accomplish their goals. So first, you might need information while you go through the innovation and idea generation process. So in that, I would probably recommend looking at news, looking at professional academic articles, really to kind of get your creative juices flowing. Then you might also need information about the logistics of running your company. So this might be information about business plans, information about financing or financials, paperwork, registration, suppliers, HR information, et cetera, and this is very case specific once again. And then finally, you might also, and this ties into logistics as well as innovation and idea generation, but I put it on its own in terms of industry and market research. So this might be to complete an environmental and situational analysis and a market analysis where you might need overviews, statistics, regulations, current developments, competition. In the market, you might need information about the product or service you want to offer, the demographics as well. So keep in mind that in business, there's no one magical place to find all this information. So you sort of have to play detective and use all these sources to find the information that is the most relevant to your decision making. So now I'll be delving into examples of some of the places you can go to find this type of information. However, remember, once again, it's not a one size fits all. It's highly personalized, and so it might not apply to every case. However, let's start with some places to go for news or professional or academic articles. Here are some of the best bets in terms of reliable news. Now, as a reminder for people who may have just joined us, I'm not going to go through all of these sources because there's so many of them, but what I'm doing is I am putting in the link to the slides again in the chat. And so what you can do is you can definitely go in, use these as kind of cheat sheets for yourself too. Now, depending on your specific case, you might also want to use Google Scholar. Now, Google Scholar is also a very useful resource for finding academic articles, but as a reminder, not everything on Google Scholar is scholarly, which is something I wish I had known as a graduate student at the beginning of my graduate degree. So in that case, really definitely be diligent in checking those 4 questions or any other kind of questions that you have or framework you have to critically evaluate that information. I also recommend that you download Unpaywall. Paywall is a Chrome extension and it'll scan the web for a free legitimate version of the article you're looking for. And the other thing that I would recommend is if you want another source for high quality journal articles that are freely available, there is the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Articles. That's really nice and useful for these cases. Here's also a little cheat sheet of some Google search tips to really elevate your Google research, whether it's through Google Scholar or just using Google. Once again, we won't go through all of these specifically, but a little cheat sheet to refer back to. Now, it is case by case dependent in terms of logistics, but a few general reliable resources when it comes to logistics is the Business Development Bank of Canada, Alberta Innovates, and Starting and Running a Business, the GOA resource, Government of Alberta. Now, the type of research you do when it comes to logistics is so varied. However, I do get a lot of student questions when it comes to competitors and suppliers. So some things to keep in mind in terms of freely available sources are the Edmonton Yellow Pages to look up other companies in the same industry, Fraser's, which provides Canadian contact information for suppliers, ThomasNet, that's listings for North American manufacturers and suppliers, the Financial Times, the company market data, Owler, industry and company profiles, and the Edmonton Business Resources. Now that we have seen these, I'm going to get a little more specific at looking at targeted resources for environmental and situational analysis. This is a little cheat sheet that breaks down some of the more common types of resources, generally the information contained in this resource as well. Now, I've covered some places you can go for news and articles, but when it comes to rest, where to look does depend on your industry or sector. However, using those smart Google search tips are really useful. And in this case, in terms of environmental analysis, I have put some links here to some really great free resources. You'll find quite a selection of different kind of authors, right? Here you'll see government resources, but you'll also see things that are consulting firms, for example, and websites as well. So some things to keep in mind. Now let's talk about resources specifically for market information and where you might look for that. So once again, this gives you some ideas. There's market reports and sometimes industry reports. And I do want to really mention this, that there's a lot of crossover between industry and market reports. So keeping that in mind is really important when you're doing this kind of research. There's also government statistics too, and news and articles. So some places to look specifically for market info is Statista. Now, Statista has a paid and free version of this. So keep that in mind. You might not be able to access everything, but I do find you get quite a bit of information on that free version of Statista. Statista has all these different types of stats on there, graphs as well, and they're pulled from really highly reliable sources for the majority in terms of that. Another one is the Canadian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, has some really interesting information on that. SIS International Market Research and HubSpot too. So those are a few freely accessible resources that I would recommend. And then there's also the government statistics. So I definitely recommend taking a look at the census data if you are not doing that already when you're looking at demographics, for example. As well, one thing that I find a lot of students doing, any kind of market analysis are interested in, is the household spending data from government, the Government of Canada. And remember that you can usually find municipal census data too. So the Edmonton Municipal Census is a great resource to look for information in terms of that. So something to look at. Now this, because we're just doing kind of an introduction, this is very much an overview. And I want to say that there's so many more resources and they're so case by case dependent, but this gives us a nice overview. Now, one thing in this, it is tough for me to refer you to U of A library resources because they can be limited for particular users and specific use due to the licenses we sign with our vendors. However, I do recommend checking out the U of A's library e-resources for alumni. And then the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Library Guide is a library guide where we focus really on freely available resources. And that's another place to go if you are not connected to the University of Alberta. And that's how, and because we open this to everyone, not just our U of A community, and that's why I do want to emphasize that as I end. And that's where I do also really want to promote Edmonton Public Library, and where I'm going to hand this off to Colleen, because Edmonton Public Library resources, anyone can access these ones. So I'm going to hand this over to Colleen. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I'll be monitoring that for the rest, and just go on and I'll pass that on to you, Colleen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Celine. Perfect. So we're just going to continue on. I do have some slides in the PowerPoint as well as we're going to pop out. I'll share my screen and we'll take a look at some of these resources live on the library's website as well. If you could just, I think Holly's driving my slides right now. Yep, perfect. So unlike the resources that Celine talked about that are sort of freely available, the resources I'm going to highlight are freely accessible if you have a library card. Otherwise, you might end up paying like a subscription, licensing, or membership fee. So it could be as little as something like $14 a month to access the Edmonton Journal, but to access something like company information through Mergent Intellect, you're looking at over $200 a month. So by having a library card, that gives you free access through the library's website to these resources. You'll notice in the slides or in the PowerPoint that not all the links are live and hyperlinked. And that's because access is dependent upon authentication through the library's website. So for most cases, I've included the link to sort of the general public or the general subject page, which will then have a link to all of the other resources that we're talking about. If you already have an Edmonton Public Library card, you'll be able to start visiting the website even as we're talking about them here. Otherwise, if you don't have a library card yet, I will cover that at the end of my part of the presentation, and we'll get everybody connected with a library card shortly then. So I've grouped our resources into 4 broad categories: practical tools for your business, news and articles, company information, and educational and material and professional development. And so most of actually can be found at that path that I had on just the previous slide, which is epl.ca, choosing digital content. And from the drop-down menu, you'll see a column for subject, and you'll want to select business, finance, and law. So we'll go to practical tools for your business. So this ties into what Celine mentioned about the logistics section, that we are looking in some cases about business plans. So the business plans handbook is actual business plans compiled for and aimed at entrepreneurs like yourselves seeking funding for small businesses. It presents sample plans for different industries, from manufacturing to retail to services, all with just sort of a sample plan. This one is the one that we're going to take a look at live just at the end of the slide. The CSA standards are obviously the Canadian Standards Association, and the library subscribes to the CSA online or on-demand platform. It has full access to all of the standards. They are a view only. There used to be a downloadable function for the PDF, but they've stopped that aspect of it. There is a web view mode if you are using a mobile device. So you can download it and be offline with your mobile device and still have access to the standards. The next three resources aren't live links at all. They are for library use only. So you do have to be inside one of the actual physical libraries. So 21 branches across the city. So hopefully we have you covered there. Grant Connect is not just for business, so it doesn't fall under the same path that I had suggested on the first slide. It's under our A to Z resources page. And basically it provides, it's a comprehensive database to help connect organizations with funders. So there's over 125 million grant records, totaling over $41 billion in giving. So Grant Connect will provide up-to-date information on the grant programs, the application guidelines, the financial history, and the key decision makers when who you're connecting with. Law Source provides Canadian legal information. This is another that is available only in library. And while we can provide access to the legal information, in no way at any time can the Edmonton Public actually offer you legal advice. So whatever information that you are accessing through Law Source yourself, we do encourage you to follow up, obviously, with a lawyer or legal aid or some other legal entity. And the material data and material safety data sheets, again, are in library use only. And because they are broader than just business, they are through the A to Z resources page as well. The Edmonton Public Library profile has the subscription to the safety data sheets and the free resources such as Chem Index. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to take a look at the business handbook. So let's see if that. So the path, as I shared before, is from epl.ca under digital content, and in the subject, we're going to drop down and choose business and finance and law. And the business plans handbook is actually our first link. So with the business plans handbook, they actually have been.
I can't see your screen. I'm not able to see your screen.
That's quite all right. Sorry about that, everyone. How are we now?
We're good.
Perfect now? Okay. I'm just going to do a little quick back step then. So for the Edmonton Public Library's website, under digital content, and we're choosing business, finance, and law under subject, which is where we'll find most of the databases that I'm going to talk about. So the business plans handbook, they have been being published since 1993. So while you can search across the series, be mindful that the information it might be retrieving for you may be 5 or 10 years older. So what we can do, we'll take a look. It's published basically annually. There's a couple of sort of like in between steps that they may have just only 1 or 2 plans. So you just want to go with the most recent one that's on the screen. So for Business Plans Handbook, the 2022, we have a general table of contents, giving you the highlights on why the business plans or how helpful they can be, as well as just an alphabetical listing of the businesses that are included in this particular volume. And as entrepreneurs, as you're creating new business ideas, so the potential does exist that there isn't going to be a business plan that actually matches what you are looking into. They do include in every volume a business plan template, which will hit the highlights and then show you what to include in your business plan, explaining that you need to have a business summary with the background, the history, and the industry outlook. You want to make sure that the product and services are included. Market examination, looking at target market consumer buying habits. So again, it's not tailored particular to what you're looking for, but it does give you that broad general plan to sort of know which elements to start looking into. A couple of notes with the business plan. Sorry, I just have to change you can save the documents to Google Drive, to OneDrive as well, email it yourself and to download it. The other element you can do is change it from being like an article on the website to actually having more of a book view and reading it as pages in a book kind of thing. So your business plan template should include the name of your business, the description, your competition, your business history. So I'm going to jump back out of screen sharing, and we're going to take a look back at the next slide. For the news and articles that are available through the library. Perfect. So something as basic and straightforward as the Edmonton Journal, we have access coverage through 2 databases, technically 3 if you're interested in health innovations from the early 1900s, but current information is definitely found through Press Reader, which is current, plus a 3-month archive, and the companion database of ProQuest recent newspapers, which picks up at 3-month back point and then goes back to 2011. The US major dailies, which also includes the Wall Street Journal, along with the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune. The database is text only as opposed to full page images with all of the additional content. However, it has incredibly detailed indexing, which allows for searching of not only complete bibliographic information, but also by company name, by products, even NAICS codes. Press Reader, which is where we're accessing the Edmonton Journal from, but also has over 2,000 newspapers and 1,000 magazines from all around the world. So over 100 different countries are covered from that, so your current information is easily accessible. The Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, and Wall Street Journal can also be found here, more as like a virtual reading experience. However, there is no depth to the back, to the archives of it. They're basically current day plus 2 days. So you have a very short window for just like browsing something like the Wall Street Journal. Flipster magazine is popular magazines. There's over 60 titles. They do include magazines such as Business Week, Forbes, and Maclean's, and there is an app available for both Apple and Android. Overdrive magazines as well. With almost 4,000 issues, I was trying to count, and the number was just getting way beyond what I was counting for. But topics on like science and technology to business and current affairs, such as Newsweek, Entrepreneur, and Fast Company are all available. And again, magazines can be read through the browser or downloaded onto mobile devices. Value Line is for news and articles, but not, just a quick mention, it's more for information for investors, which includes stock rankings and security analysis and statistics, but probably more of interest if your company is going public, rather than just at that initial entrepreneur stage. So we're going to take a quick look. I'm going to jump out of the slides again to the website, and we're going to look to see how we can get to the Wall Street Journals, the Wall Street Journals to the US dailies. So again, this one is actually under Browse. And from format, we're choosing newspapers and magazines. I'm just going to scroll down to the digital content and our US dailies. So with the US major dailies, you can pick a particular journal. This is where you can also search across the by company name or by industry to actually look at particular issues. We're going to choose with publications. And we want the Wall Street Journal. So we're just going to scroll down to that. So you want the one that doesn't say online, which is actually the one that is matching the print newspaper itself. When you select on that edition, it automatically pops up with the most current edition that's been published. The articles are text only, however. And you're just reading through as if you're reading through the page. But when you click on the details, this is where we can see the level of indexing for each article. So from company name, business industry information, NAICS codes, which would be the same if we were to be searching across back through the archives of the newspaper. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this one. We're going to pop back to the slides. Okay, I'm just checking chat. We're all good with that. Our company information, this ties in with Celine's comments on industry and market research. So Mergent Intellect used to be done in Bradstreet. It is company information from industry information, SIC, and NAICS classifications. And this is the one that we'll take a look at it at the end of the slides. The Mergent Archives, the latest reports are from 2020. So if you're in a quickly evolving industry, obviously 2,002-year-old report may not be as useful or hold the same value as something that is more current. However, the database does contain hundreds of reports over from 100 different countries and industries, an industry overview, who are the key players and forecasts for that particular industry. O'Reilly Public Libraries is over 45,000 ebooks and audiobooks and more than 3,500 videos for essential technologies and business. There are curated playlists, listings of audiobooks and learning paths from industry experts. So they've culled through all the information and actually gathered what are the top videos or ebooks that you should be like reading and watching. The other one with O'Reilly for Public Libraries is the case studies. This is another one we'll take a quick look at. These are a series of 1-hour interactive events that explore how an organization have overcome common challenges in business and technology. Sort of a learning from somebody who's done it, and you can either learn from their mistakes or see which paths they took. And just to note that the Harvard Business Review Guides are available also through, it's one of the access points for the Harvard Business Review Guides is through the O'Reilly for Public Libraries. So we're going to jump out of the slides again and back into the website. We're going to get back into our business. So Mergent Intellect. If somebody had a company name they wanted to see if we can do a check on and see, otherwise we can pop that into chat. Otherwise, I'll show you one with CVS Healthcare. One big tip for when you're searching in Mergent Intellect, make sure to check off the results box at the top. Otherwise, it will exclude all Canadian results. So do we have, let's see. Okay. Let's go ahead and see what we can find. We're going to this. Oh, JLL, sure. Let's take a look at that one. Okay, and McDonald's. Okay, are we JLCMG? Sorry, I may just need a little close clarification on which one we might be looking for. Okay. Oh, Pfizer could be interesting. Let's see. KPF. Okay. Pfizer Incorporated. So the merged intellect information will come back. We have general company details, news articles from the web, financial details about the company from total revenues across time, industry details, primary NAICS code. The industry reports will actually open as a PDF article as a separate document. So research from there. Even executive details. Oh, my apologies, we're having a little bit of a lag. Family trees to see how one company is connected to the other corporate company. We can also search by NAICS codes. I'm just going to go back to our original homepage here. And let's try 62. No, okay. Better search plan for that. So I don't hold things up. We're going to take a look at O'Reilly for public libraries as well, real quick. This is where I said O'Reilly has playlists, which are curated audiobook lists for industry leaders on different topics. The learning paths are deep dives, again, guided insight from experts. So a collection of videos and ebooks. And then more specifically, the case studies to see how companies have done what they do and learn from their experiences. So it is a video. They are available after the date when they were originally live broadcasts. So Snap Health Alliance uses blockchain to improve data management. These will all be videos that you have fully accessible. Oh, thank you, Arun. Okay, we're going to pop out of the, actually, no, I will stop sharing and we'll pop back into the slides again. One last thing to take a look at as in terms of resources are the educational material and professional development resources that are available. So Gale courses are interactive and instructor-led online courses that have a very broad range of topics, everything from science and technology, computer applications to healthcare and medical and business. They are designed as a 6-week course, in which case you take them starting on new courses are listed or started every Wednesday. You actually have to complete the course in the 6 weeks. They are, there's a final exam and there is a certificate at the end of it, but it is on that time structured path of 6 weeks. One of the others is LinkedIn Learning, and you are probably already familiar with this. Formerly it was lynda.com, but rather than paying a personal subscription fee, your library card will give you access to the unlimited access to all of their courses. So again, courses on business, software, and technology. You actually don't even, I see in the chat, can you link your account? You have to pass through the library's website to get to sort of like the free access element of LinkedIn because of the EPL paying for that subscription. So if you go directly to LinkedIn, there isn't a way for it to authenticate your library card information. So it can't tell that you've got that access. So you don't even have to have a LinkedIn account. So for some of our colleagues who are not on LinkedIn, no worries. Basically having your library card and entering through the library's website is how you will get that access. Similar courses in some cases that Gale offers, so like the offline and things like that, there is certificates available. However, it's more of that self-paced learning. You're not tied to a 6-week schedule for completion. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on chat as well. One more thing to mention about LinkedIn Learning, and this ties to the Makerspace, which Holly is going to talk about shortly, is that a number of the design softwares that are used in the Makerspace, such as Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, Fusion 360, Apple Adobe Production, such as Logic, these can all be learned through LinkedIn Learning, becoming familiar with the software even before you begin using the creative computers and the software in the Makerspace. So the path for the professional development and the educational is the EPL.ca under digital content, and you're choosing learn from the activity, and that will list off both Gale, LinkedIn, as well as any of the other databases that we have for learning and educational purposes. Just a couple more slides. So even though we have been talking primarily about and focusing on web resources, I don't want you to forget about, let's not forget about the books. For example, the Harvard Business Review. While we do have over 50 different titles of the Harvard Business Review, including the HBR guides and the HBR's 10 must-read lists, some of them are in print book, other ones are, depending on your topic, others are ebooks available through Hoopla or Freeding, and still others are streaming audiobooks through O'Reilly for Public Libraries and Hoopla. Access to the software on EPL. No, unfortunately, EPL is, we can provide the instruction in general to the software. The software is available essentially on the computers in the Makerspace. So Holly may address this after, but software is not something that we're able to loan out or sort of like freely license that way. And as I mentioned before, just so that everybody can have access to these resources, we need to get you to have a library card. So great news, the library cards are free. You can get one in person at any Edmonton Public Library location. There are 21 in the city. Just requires information, identification, and a piece of information with your current address on it. That proof of address is necessary for getting a library card, because our licensing agreements, as Celine mentioned similarly, that they are tied to geographic residence sort of in Edmonton proper. So that's where that address proof is necessary. And if you can't make it into any of our locations, you can register online for a library card. No physical library card will be created, but it is a full membership. The library, the online registration uses a third-party vendor called TransUnion, and it presents a series of multiple choice questions, which will confirm your identity and thus allow you to get a library card. So I'm going to pass you over to my colleague now, Holly, and she's going to tell you about our amazing Makerspace.
Hi, everybody. Great to have everybody here this afternoon. And as Colleen mentioned, I'm going to talk about the Makerspace at EPL. So first, what is a Makerspace? Many of you may have heard the term already, and you may be familiar that there's a few Makerspaces on campus. But if this is new concept for you, you'd like to hear a kind of a background on it. A Makerspace is really a creative space where a community gathers resources together and allows people to express creativity, to explore ideas, and to learn new skills. And that's really what our Makerspace at the Edmonton Public Library is all about. We have a newly renovated 10,000 square foot space for our Makerspace at the Stanley A. Milner Library downtown. And this is a really significant expansion for us, and we're offering a number of different services. So what I'm going to do in my talk here is kind of speak about which services we have currently available, where they're located, highlight a couple of notable customer projects for you, especially those that might have connections with entrepreneurs, and also talk a little bit about some services that are upcoming for the Makerspace too in the next year or so. As you can see here in the photos, oh, sorry, Celine. As you can see here in the photos, we have this nice, big, bright creative space. That's kind of where the bulk of our public computers in the Makerspace are located. And we also have our tools located in that space. There are staff always in this space as well who are dedicated to supporting people, helping them get started. Also, we have a photo here of one of our recording studios. We have 3 planned. We have 2 operated in total at the moment, and they fit anywhere from 2 to 3 people to 3 to 5 people, depending on the size of the recording studio. As you can see, they're fully equipped with everything that you need for audio recordings, or if you're a musician on the side and you need a place to practice, we're a space for that as well. So we've had people do podcasts and all kinds of things in these recording studios. So really, it's a wonderful and bright space. I'd welcome you to come and have a look, but I wanted to show you a little bit of a preview today in our presentation. So moving along, I want to really highlight what services are currently available. We have services located at 4 of our different locations throughout the city. We're kind of missing a south side location, so I'm working on that, but we have something in the northeast of the city, Abbotsfield. We have Capilano, which is sort of northwest, northeast as well, and further east, and Londonderry, which is sort of more north central, and then we have Stanley A. Milner downtown, where most of the core of our services are located. I'll talk about what's at the branches in just a moment. At the Stanley A. Milner Library, in that big, bright space, we're offering a number of different services. And as I mentioned, we're looking to add more soon. So we're offering a 3D printing service to the public. We're offering vinyl cutting at a heat press. And we're offering access to Creative IMAX. Colleen mentioned some of the specialty software that LinkedIn.com has really good coverage of. So our Adobe Creative Cloud. At our Makerspace locations, you can access that software for free on site on a big, beautiful 27-inch iMac. The studios I mentioned as well, and we have a digital conversion workstation. So this may not be as much for entrepreneurs, but if you happen to have a shoebox of family VHS tapes at home sitting somewhere waiting to be digitized to bring those memories back, this is a service for you. We can digitize VHS tapes, scan photo negatives. There's a couple of other things like cassette capture as well. Occasionally, we have had scholars use this when they're doing research that's more archival in nature, and they've brought something actually over from the U of A and then been able to view it on our workstation at the Makerspace. So we love working with the U of A and collaborating in that way. I'll also mention that we have a full children's makerspace. So this is for kids from 6 to 12. There are activities kits where kids can spend an hour inside the makerspace working with robots, building simple machines. They can spend time kind of working on a 3D design as well. There's tons to do in that children's makerspace on the main floor. So that's also something not to check, or sorry, not to miss. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on a couple of questions here. As I mentioned, the IMAX that we have at all 4 locations, those are located at our smaller branches, and they'll be bringing some other services along pretty soon as well. But I really wanted to highlight the specialty software because we know that the licensing for this can be quite expensive, both for people and especially if they don't have access to institutional licensing anymore. So that's definitely something to check out. And as Colleen mentioned, there's really great coverage in our courses that are available either through the 6-week stream or self-paced. Another thing that I'll mention too is with access to things like video editing, you may not think of it, but we've actually had people come in and make promo videos for their businesses as they're getting started, work on their websites, do voiceover recording for something, a presentation. So there's lots of possibilities where you might find having free access to this on a one-time basis really useful depending on what kind of project you're doing. I'm just going to pause for a moment and have a quick look at the questions. So the cost of 3D printing, vinyl cutting, and the studios, that is a really great question. So Celine, can you take us into the next slide? because we're going to get into a little bit more service detail, and I'll get to every question that's been asked here. So with our 3D printing service, to access this service, the approach that we're taking, and I'd say a philosophy that we're applying throughout the services of the Makerspace at EPL, is we're really trying to put the public into the driver's seat with these various technologies. So there's really an emphasis on directly training people to operate the 3D printer and to operate other services such as the vinyl cutter. We really want to have staff there to support people's learning and to help with the safety and problem solving that comes up in these kind of creative projects as well. With 3D printing, customers are required to take a class in advance, and once they do that, and that's online, you can sign up through the EPL website with your library card. Once they've taken that class online, they're able to book in person or through a virtual appointment, and we're accepting print requests that are up to 12 hours at a time. Library staff, as I mentioned, will take you through the process of loading up that printer, slicing your file, getting it all set up so it's ready to print, and they'll teach you each aspect of the process. There is a cost associated with the 3D printing service, and that's 10 cents per gram. So I have a small little ear saver for kids here. This is something that was being printed a lot as kind of a aid application earlier in the pandemic. I'd say that this would be probably 10 to 20 cents produced in the Makerspace as an example. And it's really your time that's being contributed. And, you know, probably our service is more suitable for those entry-level requests. If you're moving to the level of mass producing an object, probably you'll be looking to contract more professional 3D printing services. But we're a great place to get started. And I think I have some examples coming up to help you with that. So with studios, there's absolutely no cost to use these. We train you on site when you show up for your first booking. We recommend calling ahead or emailing the Makerspace, and we'll have contact information at the end. For vinyl cutting, you can bring your own material if you like, but also we sell material to the public. It's $2.50 per square foot. So for a piece that's about this big, that's about $3. And again, the staff will teach you as part of your first booking how to operate the equipment safely, and then they'll be there to support you and help you with troubleshooting as well. And the heat press training is included in that, or it can be done separately. In general, our approach is that these services in the second floor Makerspace really work best for 12 and up. Kids, however, can use these services when they're accompanied by an adult. So in terms of our vinyl cutting and heat press service, a really popular application of this is making t-shirts. And we've had, you know, kids and families come in and make like t-shirts that are all customized and like, you know, based on fan things and just really creative. But we've also had young entrepreneurs who are prototyping activewear come in and test out their designs on garments and see how, if they like it, if they like the colors, if they like the fabric, and how everything's working together. So we've had everything from sort of those more general, really inspired by fun, to people who really are exploring whether they might want to do a business. As I mentioned, there's training required for these services, and we're providing that through library staff, in most cases on site, but in some cases like 3D printing, we're asking people to take an online course in advance. And you can find more details. That link unfortunately isn't live. I should have livened that up for you. But you can definitely visit epl.ca/makerspace, and you'll find a full landing page with details on the 3D printing service. I see some more questions have been coming in, so I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to take you through a couple of examples, and then I'll address the questions. So moving to the next step, we have a couple of examples because I wanted to kind of give you a sense of how people are interfacing with this service and the kinds of things that they're making. I think it's really important to state out front that for medical applications, because we're aimed at the general public, we don't have medical grade 3D printers or medical grade applications in terms of the technology that we're using. So our resources may not be suitable for all of the ideas that you have, but there might be some areas where you might be able to find a use for our services, or at least start some exploration. We have here a tool that's basically been created for proper spacing of a particular kind of crop on the left. And this was created using a scripting interface called OpenSCAD. That's OpenSCAD. And that's something that a customer designed because they wanted to plant a really specific crop in their garden, but they needed really precise spacing requirements for the seeds. So they whipped up some coding to put that together and they printed it off. And we got a really nice photo of their garden kind of in process. We also have here a telescope on the right. And at the back of the telescope, a custom fitting and enclosure has been designed and printed with a 3D printer so that a Raspberry Pi computer with a camera can be attached to the telescope for astrophotography purposes. So that's another example of how 3D printing might be used. It might be used to fasten instrumentation or to test out an idea around fastening instrumentation, or holding a single board computer as an example. That's a pretty common application. Moving along, a couple of other specific examples that have come to us over the years. Folks in this presentation might have a better sense of this than I do. This is a 3D to trachea for a cricothyroid dichotomy simulation. So this is a procedure that's carried out on the thyroid, and there's a number of articles where people have been prototyping a practice model for helping people to plan and learn how to do this particular procedure. So one day somebody was having difficulty getting access to their lab 3D printer because it was booked solid, and they came over and basically got it printed off at the library, and we were happy to work with them on that. So it's not a typical application for us, but it is an example of how 3D printing and sort of the medical research area and maybe even entrepreneurship can intersect. Another example is a brain that a customer brought to us. Well, they actually brought to us their CT scan files and in the DICOM format. We were able to help the customer follow sort of instructions that were just published by other institutions and researchers to translate, basically separate down to the neural layer and export the brain model itself and process it into an STL for 3D printing. So we were able to 3D print that for the customer. And that's really interesting because I know like in the Glenrose, for example, they're doing 3D printing of hearts to help with patient information and education. And so there's maybe some interesting opportunities that you might explore if you have access to those files. And if you want to test them out, that's something that we could potentially help you out with, depending on the scale, I guess, and the scope. Just a fun note, we were able to print this off in glow in the dark for the customer. So that was quite a fun twist that we were able to put on this as well. In terms of a couple of services that are coming up in the next year or in the following year, we're kind of phasing through launching these services. We're going to be introducing access to a black box studio photo and photography space, our studio lab. This will be provided for free and be able to be booked with your library card, and probably will be booked for a half day or a full day at a time. There'll be some training involved. We'll be also expanding access for 3D printing to include an SLA resin 3D printer. So this is a higher resolution process that basically results in much finer models depending on what's going on. And we'll also be introducing access to sewing machines and a serger. And we know that there's lots of interest in the community, everything from learning to repair clothing to actually designing and making clothing, or maybe not just having access or room for the equipment in their own houses. So we're really excited to introduce that, and that's coming soon. Some other upcoming technologies are on the next slide. And that's going to be part of our Fab Lab service that will be launched. So on our left, we have an owl, and this is an example of a CNC milled object. We have a small benchtop CNC mill for working with wood. And so we're going to be basically providing a training for that, and then providing booked access to this tool, similar to the way that we're running the 3D printing service. We're also going to be introducing access to an 80-watt CO2 Trotec laser cutter. And again, in a similar approach, we're going to be providing some upfront training for folks so that they know how to use this safely, they know which materials are acceptable, what the cost will be to buy materials from EPL, all of those details. And that'll be accessible as well through booked access to the service and staff support. So those are coming soon. I don't have a timeline for those yet, but definitely watch for those and keep an eye on the EPL website because we'll definitely announce once those are available. Just moving into the last part, I'm going to start working on these questions that everyone's been sharing. Thank you everybody so much for your attention and your questions. So one of the first questions that I got was about accessing the LinkedIn learning courses if you're an international student. I think it depends a little bit on if you have, I don't know, Celine might be able to help me out with this. It depends on what kind of access you have through the U of A already. If you have access through the U of A library already, there's a way to connect your card and enroll your card in what's called the LPass to get access to EPL's resources with your one card. However, depending if you're a resident of the city, even if it's not maybe forever, you'd also qualify to get a resident card for free. So that's another way that you might be able to get access to EPL's both e-resources and then the resources of the Makerspace as well. So I hope that answers the question. Celine, do you have anything to jump in and share for that?
I'm just sharing the link to the LPass right now so that anyone connected to the U of A can take a look at that. The other thing is that definitely if you are a student somewhere else, I know you didn't have to be a U of A student to participate in this, definitely look at your own campus library too, right? In your own local library. That's also something we'd like to encourage in this as well. Yeah.
There is a question which is very connected to the discussion. Someone is asking if they are already trained at the university, do they still need to be trained at EPL?
That is a great question. And yes, if you've already received some kind of tool training at the university, we would still need to do some retraining with you at EPL, just so that you're aware of what the terms of service and guidelines are for the use of EPL's equipment, and to ensure that we've covered the safety fundamentals with you. We have a waiver that we would have you sign as part of the process as well. So we know that there's a community of users who's interested in access to our equipment and may already have some training, and we're working on some ways to streamline our certification process so that people get access to the tools faster. But for the most part, it shouldn't be too difficult if you have some training already. It's mainly just going to be review, and we really thank you for participating in that if you're interested in accessing the tools.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much. I was wondering about time. We are already over our scheduled hour. So what I would suggest is we are saving the chat, and there are a lot of great questions. And just to be mindful of time and mindful of people's other commitments, I would suggest that we save the chat and we discuss it, and we will get back to everybody with answer to their questions, if it's acceptable to all of you. Celine, Holly, and Colleen?
That would be perfect.
And thank you everyone for participating. I think this took longer because of the wonderful participation and wonderful questions we got, which we are not unhappy about that at all. This is what we want to see, right? So thank you so much.
This is perfect. Yes, it has been really great. Thank you everybody for joining us. And we will be sharing the link to this recording so that you can get to it. We also have got another event in the pipeline with the libraries. And so stay connected. We will share information as it is available. Thanks for joining.